Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Inquisitive Minds podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Johnny Smith. With me today, my guest, he is an author of Elk County Murders and Murderous Deaths, Volume 1, among many other things. We're going to talk to him today. Jim Baumgratz, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Johnny.
How you
Glad to-
doing today?
Oh, not too bad for a Monday.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I got your book in the mail, and I read it, and I tell you what, it was a fascinating tale of true crime, but it was like an old school true crime, if that makes sense at all. It was very interesting, and it reminded me just of as a time when men were made of steel. You know,
Right.
even in the paragraph or the excerpt you sent me for the second book, um, people shut down their whole companies to help look for this kid. How did you get into the foray of true crime? Did it start as a youngster?
I was interested always all through my life. Back in the day, there there was an investigation, discovery, and so forth. But um, I guess it started when there's a book called Tiger at the Bar, and it's about an attorney. He actually was Pennsylvania Attorney General for 2 terms. He was from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where the groundhog is. And during Prohibition, he came through this area. And whenever he's in some of the stories in my book, but he lived a fascinating life. He was able to get off pretty much anybody that had money. He was such a
Mm.
good attorney. And years ago in the 1990s, me and a partner bought the Johnsburg Hotel, which actually just burned down here a couple months ago.
Oh, that's
Um,
unfortunate.
well, I called it Hotel Hell because it was hell. But we were going to make the rumor is that Al Capone stayed there. He,
Oh,
he probably did, but under his assumed name back then.
okay.
And it was kind of the center of Johnsburg, and Johnsburg is in Elk County was the most violent place, I guess you could say, because it features prominently in a lot of the stories that I brought. But I was going to make a bar. There already was a big bar there, but I was going to call it like Capone's or whatever. And
Oh,
people
that's
said,
cool.
read Tiger at the Bar. Well, then I began like a 6-month quest to find this book, and they wanted like $600 for it. And so actually, what I did was I formed a publishing company. I got the copyright to it, and I republished it. Um, but it had a lot of stories in it that I'd never heard of local. And I just got to thinking, wonder how many more there is. And then I remember the story of the camp master telling me about the pig, the guy that fed the guy to the pigs. So uh, I was in between jobs in 2002. So I went to the courthouse and our Elk County courthouse where I started. And that's where I found out a lot of the information. And so between 2002 and 2018, I was working on books, but I never finished them. And what I did was I made a New Year's resolution, and I actually kept that one. So I came out with Volume 1 in 2018. And since then, I've come out with Volume 2, Volume 3, and then McKean County Volume 1. Of course, I'm working on 2 books here right now, beyond
Wow,
now.
so you're staying extremely busy. That's always good to hear. It's nice to be productive. Now, there's something I want to touch on real quick. There's a big story that you took a liking to that also interests me. It's the Pickle barrel murder.
Right.
Do you
Okay.
want to just go into that one? Jump right
Okay.
into it.
And that's probably, I call it the most famous case in Elk County. We do have one other one. Didn't happen here, but Susan Reinhardt, she's buried here in Ridgeway, and
Mm.
she would be the um, Joseph Wambaugh wrote the book about her murder, the mainline murders down in Philadelphia, and she was the teacher. But anyways, the Pickle Barrel murder. Uh, there's a gentleman. His name was Dominic Scopoletti, and he was called the King of the Bootleggers in 1926 in Johnsonburg. He always wore really nice, expensive, tailored suits. He had brand new Chevy truck, brand new car, and had no visible means of income, but
Mm.
everybody knew what he did. Um, so he disappeared one night in September of 1926, and he didn't come home. Um, right outside of Johnsonburg, there's a hill. It's called Brick Hill, and back in the day, they used to throw garbage. Everybody would throw their garbage. That was a common thing back then. They didn't have, garbage pickup, so everybody would throw their garbage in this. The bottom of the hill, there was a railroad track, and people were poor, and there was two kids walking along the railroad track looking for pieces of coal that fell off of the coal trucks that came, or coal trains that came into Johnsonburg. And the one little boy looked into the dump and he saw a brand new boot. So he thought, oh, I'll take the boot. And he went over and picked up the boot and it had a foot in it. So what happened was, of course, then he went screaming to his dad and
yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, he saw the barrel too. There was a barrel in there, and he saw other pieces of the body. So what he did was, the Elk County detective back then, his name was Leo Warner, and they called him the Dutchman because he was German. He lived in Johnsburg actually, but how the story goes was whenever there was a assassination, murder, whatever in the immigrant community, namely Italian community, they said Warner would put his hands up and say, "Clear case of suicide," because he knew he wouldn't get any information from the community, which is what happened. They logged up. They did investigation. He was cut into 11 pieces, still had a suit on, stuffed in a barrel and rolled down into the dump. And they assumed he would never be found because you'd be digging through that dump, but it broke open.
Damn kids.
Yep. So now, if you know anything about mafia, well, I'm not saying mafia, I'm allowed to say that. Black hand slayings, organized crime. They didn't do that. Like if it was a simple rub out, they would just put a bullet in their head.
The cut into 11 pieces that's fascinating.
Yeah, so they knew that there was something personal there. And what Warner found out, like the next night they had, back then they had the wakes in the house, and all the people were there, including his best friend and bodyguard. What the heck's his name there? But his bodyguard was there, and his bodyguard stepped outside to have a cigarette in his house, right outside the house, and disappeared. He was never seen again. Tony Marchese. Marchese, his name was. So Werner kind of knew. Definitely, he's got something to do with it. He was able to get some information. This detective Warner's in a lot of my books because I'll tell you, he solved a lot of these homicides. When I say solved, he knew who did it. He just could never prove it.
Yeah.
And he put a blind article in the paper in 1926 saying what really happened was Marchese was basically, or not Marchese, Scopoletti was kidnapped when he was in Ridgeway in Obie Grant Park, and actually right there he was shot in the head 3 times. They took him to a garage, cut him up 11 pieces, and there was more than one person involved. Now most of the people are dead nowadays that knew anything about this, but I did get a call. I talked about this on Halloween, say 2003, on a radio show, and I got a call the next morning from a guy with a heavy Italian accent. He wouldn't tell me his name, He just kept saying, "You know what really happened there, didn't you?" I said, "No, I don't," And finally he did tell me who he is. Now he's dead now, but he said the Scopoletti was actually messing around with the bodyguard's wife, and so the bodyguard took revenge and cut him up in 11 pieces and threw him down the hill.
So you got a call from a blast from the past and gave you the real information, eh?
Right.
That to me is fascinating as all hell.
And then he told me that the Tony Marchese came back. He waited until Detective Werner retired, and actually in the 30s, Werner left Elk County law enforcement and became a special police officer for a local company. And this guy came back, I guess, and with a different name. I'm not going to say the name. He's dead now, but he has family here.
That's so cool to me. And like without people like you, because honestly, I've heard of Elk County, but just in passing, without people like you to tell these interesting stories or to relay them, they get lost, and stuff like this is so fascinating.
Well, I have a great one I'm working on, which will be in Allegheny County, but it's just on one person.
Really?
hardly ever heard of. Yeah, but I'll let you know when I get closer to that one. It's a serial killer, but he was there's no books written about him. He was never prosecuted in Allegheny County or Ohio.
Really? Because I actually do another podcast with a friend of mine called Murderous States of Mind, where we talk about the serial killers all throughout the United States, and we go by order of statehood. So when you release that book, I'd love to bring you back on to talk about that. That's really exciting.
I will. I mean, I found it by accident, and actually, I sent a letter to him. He's still alive. He's on death row in Florida.
So did you have any type of background in true crime, professional wise, or just a hobby?
Just pretty much a hobby. My degrees in rehabilitative substance abuse, and I worked in the mental health field for a while. For 20 years now, I've been with Xerox as a sales rep. Um, maybe I wanted to be an attorney, but I guess around the time I took the law school exam, my son was coming, so which I didn't
Hey,
know, but
hey, I dig it, man. Stuff happens.
so I
Uh,
never was able to do that.
hey, we end up where we're supposed to, they say. No, but this is very interesting. Now, a lot of your research it wasn't like regular internet research today. Was it like foot to the ground? You had to go find old newspapers, things like that, research court documents.
Correct. In Pennsylvania until I think it was in the teens. There was a special court. It actually was in New York too, but they're not very helpful up there as far as their records aren't as easy to find as ours are. But it was called the Oyer and Termer Court, and you could go to that book, and it was everybody that was charged with a felony. So how I had to start was looking through there to find homicides, manslaughter, highway robbery, whatever, and then you have to take each one case and you write down their names, and then each one has a tab. So I mean, each one will have a file, but then all the files, if they survive, they're in the basements, which are all
Mm,
dirty, old, and cold. And so I have to pull each file. Now, some of them, luckily, there's a lot more information in there. There's some trial transcripts, there's some pictures, um, but that's where I start. Now I keep most of my murders before 1960 for a reason. I'm not writing these to bring back bad memories of people, Uh, but I'll tell you, a lot of the people, relatives of the victims, plus relatives of the perpetrators, have contacted me and gave me a lot more information. Uh,
really? Like, do they ever get contact you because they're offended?
no, not
No,
one. Um,
that's
you
interesting.
know, like I had a lady email me from California, and it would have been her great grandfather. And she said she didn't know if I wrote about it, but she didn't know if it was even true. She just her mother would whisper it once in a while. And I said, that's in my volume one. And she was like, oh my God, it really is true. So I mean, it's not like a big, you know, I guess how you'd think it'd be offended, but I had another lady that emailed me that her great grandfather in the 1860s, 1870s, was supposedly convicted of murder. Then he got out, and then he was himself, died to a murder like 500 feet from where the original murder happened.
Mm.
I sent her the whole, information, and she says, I just heard he was an SOB, and he really was because he drank a lot, But and that's, I mean, I'll just tell you this one real quick too. In volume one, there is the murder of the guy's name was Vincent Malfera,
Hmm.
and about 2 years ago, I got an email from a lady up in Canada, and she said, he got murdered in 1926, real close to the Pickle Barrel murder. He was murdered because he had a lot of money on him. He was a bootlegger also, but he did work at the mill in Johnsonburg. Um, but the family back in Italy, he had a wife and three kids. They received the letter edged in black with all the information about his murder, but it never said where in the United States. So that family has been searching since 1926 to find what happened to their
Hmm.
ancestor. And she gave up. She said 20 years she married a grandson of this murdered guy from 1926 in Johnsonburg. She gave up, and somehow she went onto my website and she saw the name. She said, "Oh, I wonder if this is him." So she emailed me all the details of the crime, and I said, that's him.
So you were able to give closure.
Right. And they came down. I remember it was a March 31st. Actually, it was my birthday. It was snowing and blowing out, and I took them of a tour of what's left in Johnsonburg of where he got murdered, where he would have been, where I thought he was buried, and actually turns out he was buried there. And the kind of the funny thing, like now you're talking almost 100 years later, the son or the grandson got on the phone with an uncle, and they spoke in Italian, and they mentioned the 5 guys that were playing cards with. Oh, Vito, that was his name. Vito.
Oh man.
5 guys, their last names, and the funny thing is, a lot of those names are still existent around here. But so they knew the whole story, they just could never find out. And here, her problem was, which is quite a quite a problem back then. They didn't really write names good, so his death certificate said Vito Mulfara, Mulfara. His real name was Vito Malfara, Malfara. So she was on Ancestry searching for Vito Malfara all these years. And there's a lot of them on there, but they're not the right one. Well,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
That's a beautiful story of closure. Actually, you mentioned real quick your website. Can you plug that real quick so that people can know where to find you?
Sure, it's elkcountymurder.com. elkmurder.com.
Got
And
it.
I'm also on
make
Facebook.
Sure to check that out.
Also on Facebook, I do have a McKeanCountyMurder.com that goes the same place as Elk County Murder, and then I'm working on a book now, Potter Tioga County Murders.com, because they're 2 small counties up in the north up there, and I got some great stories there. But some actually supernatural stuff. But I
really?
Well, I'm going to plug it real quick, anyways. But
yeah, have at it.
And this won't be in the murder book, because it's not a murder. But and this is recent. That area is full of natural gas, and so they're drilling up there now, and they just sunk a new well probably about 6 months ago, and way back in the woods up by Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, and they sunk it into a Indian burial ground. Of course, they didn't know that, but then they saw evidence of it. So they moved the rig. Obviously, the state came in. They moved the rig. They kept it hush hush. So I've talked to some of the workers that are back there. Some of them quit because they won't stay there at night. And these are big rigs, and they kind of look like I don't know if you ever see an oil rig, but they have like a huge. They bring back a huge vessel. It kind of looks like a real big garbage.
Yes.
You know what I mean. And it has railings and has wood, metal steps up to it, and that's where the guys have to stay during the night to make sure everything runs right. Well, they've been hearing all types of noises up there. They hear somebody coming up the metal stairs. There's nobody there. They're seeing shadows of a real tall, they assume Indian guy with a young maid, and they're hearing voices, they're hearing all this stuff. So I got to get in there, just I'm not a paranormal investigator, but I'll tell you, I want to feel it. So
I tell you what, that interests me because we've done some amateur paranormal investigations with varying results. Just let me ask you real quick: Have you had any paranormal experiences?
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I just had one. I'll tell you if you want to do one. Do you know Ryan Cavallini?
I do not.
Oh, okay. You might want to talk to him sometime. He does some good stuff. But there's a cemetery. Well, I could talk to an hour about these things I've run into. But there's this. They call it the Halton Children's Cemetery.
Halton Children's Cemetery.
And it's the middle of nowhere. This is in the southern end of the county. I always heard about it. Actually, I heard about it from teenagers. Then I ran into this girl from Romania who lives here, and she's psychic, so forth. And she always told me, well, if you go to that cemetery, she says up in the right hand up there, she said that's where all the babies are born or buried.
Oh.
And I said, what babies? And she said, well, there was a house of prostitution close to that during the heyday. I mean, there's nothing in Halton anymore except an old bar, a couple houses, but the rest of it's
Mhm.
gone. That was a big lumber companies there. Um, so I just wanted to go, and then I wrote about a murder that happened down there. So I thought, well, maybe the guy's buried in Halton Cemetery, and you can have an excuse to go there. So I go there, and I mean, it's pretty well uh, forlorn. You know what I mean? It's not taken care of. There's trees laying there. There's rattlesnakes there. So if you
So
go,
so it not only it looks scary too then, since
oh, it
it's
is.
tempt and it's got the whole vibe going.
You go in, and there is some adults there, but most of them are, 20 years and younger. A lot of them died from scarlet fever. Whole families wiped out. So,
Mm.
and some local people went there and put toys on the graves. Okay, so these old toys are
Oh,
on there. So
that's
that
creepy. That's so
even
creepy.
yeah, it's real creepy. If you go onto my Facebook page, go down there, you'll see a lot of the toys. That kind of freaked me out, and you feels like somebody's watching you. And even though it's right across the road where you park, so you can see your car and all that. But uh, long story short, after I was there, and I was there during the daylight because I'm not going at night. Because a lot of kids went at night. They told me the freaky stuff they saw, So, but when I you know how like you look in the rear view mirror of your car and you see something, and you don't
Yes.
know what it is. Well, something was following me and it kept waving to me. But then I would stop and I get out and I walk around my car. And nothing there. And then I'd start driving
Oh.
and now it followed me probably for 10 miles. I finally pulled into this recreation area, Sandy Beach, and I had a
That is
medical.
not a short distance. That's got to be a long 10 miles for you then.
It was pretty freaky. So I posted it on Facebook what happened, and Ryan Cavallini, he's a local. He makes movies on Bigfoot and so forth, and
Okay.
paranormal, and he set up a camera there at that cemetery, and he has the image on my Facebook page of two little boys walking at midnight, you know, through the cemetery. So,
Little apparitions.
yep. So I mean that's one of them. I mean,
Wow, I'll have to check this out. I started this episode thinking I was talking to a true crime author when I found a wealth of entertainment in this man. This is so exciting. I love this type of stuff.
I could
I,
tell you
I,
some real
I'm
bad
yeah,
stuff.
I'm definitely gonna have to check out your Facebook page, man. That's fascinating. I don't want to get
Yeah,
too
we'll
off
get
topic,
sidetracked.
but
Yeah.
I do say just jumping back to you doing your research, I romanticize the idea of like having to go through the basement and dig through the boxes. Was it like that, or was actually things fairly organized?
Uh, wasn't too bad. Well, McKean County, I went up there to Smithport, okay,
Okay.
in wasn't the pandemic, so it had been the year before. And I went on Fridays. I took off of work, and it was freezing in there. There's no heater in there. Lights and water and snow and whatever. But it just takes a lot of time. It wasn't that it wasn't you know pretty easy to find because theirs was very organized. So,
Hmm.
I mean, but it took me 4 Fridays to pull. I think I pulled about 150 murders. Okay, I mean, I don't have all the information on them, so
Yeah.
pulled 450. Some were better than others. Like there was a lot more information there. Some of them I kind of shied away from. Um, but I have them now, so I have 150 from there. And then what? Then now see, I belong to newspaperarchives.com, newspapers.com, ancestry.com. So
Okay.
that provides a lot of the information and a lot of the story. What I have to do then too, a lot of times I'm lucky enough that it'll say where the murder took place, so I'll go there, and that's where I get my pictures. I'll drive to where it is, and if you go to Ancestry and you will find the death certificate, then it tells you there where they're buried. So I'd like to put a
Oh,
picture of
that's
it,
pretty convenient.
and then I got to spin the tail because now it's not going to be. Well, you got all this information, like to show you it there. Like I have Now this is for a different book I'm writing. This one's Mysterious, Tragic, and Forgotten Elk County. And so I file it all up as I'm collecting information, then I gotta go back and write. So.
Oh, I do want to compliment your writing style real quick because um, the information that you present in the book, it's written in a way that's very palatable and it's inviting. Like it's not dry, it's interesting. You explain the tale clearly, the scenario, and it makes you want to read more. Like it, very very welcoming style of writing there. Thank you on that. It was hell of a book here. I do want to ask a question for volume two, Elk County Murders. I have a chapter here about this young boy who was missing in Highland, Edwin Adams.
Now
Um,
here's the only picture I have. I don't know if you can see
I could
that.
see that.
Wasn't a
Okay.
good picture. All right, but that's the only picture that ever existed of Edwin, little
And
Edwin.
he was 9 at the time of his disappearance.
And I'm gonna freak you out here too,
Okay.
because uh, where he went missing up in Highland. Okay, now are you familiar with David Politis?
I am not.
Okay, Missing 411 Project.
Okay, missing 411. I'll write that down.
That I mean, it's huge, but that's something I'm interested. He talks about all the people that disappeared in the United States. He started in the national parks. All these people disappeared, and he actually had a little blurb uh, in one of his books. It mentioned this little Edwin Adams. His name might have been Edward, but Edwin is what I'm using. Okay.
Okay.
But he went missing in Highland, and now the weird thing about the reason David Politis, I think he's a director of, and I'm not, my books aren't geared towards Sasquatch or Bigfoot or anything, but he kind of, he has a lot of podcasts on
Hey
Bigfoot.
man, I've had a few guests. Shout out to Fred Saluga. Shout out to Brian Seach, a couple of my Bigfoot people that came on.
Right. And so if you read a story here, Missing in Highland, this little boy, the three boys that were with him that day when they were scared by, as they say, dark man, dark figure, scary, jumped out of the weeds, scared them, they ran. Uh, little Eddie was only 9. He couldn't run as fast, so he got taken. Um, now, I have a camp up not too far from where this happened. And actually, I was there the other day. I went down into the hollow where he would have disappeared. And there's a trout stream in there. And there's also a ghost town there, McKinley. There's nothing left of it. You see steps that went to the houses. So those people were there in 1910. I just, wondered. And I walked along the stream. I did see some natives, so there is still trout in there. I couldn't see any trout up above. And I saw a huge trout in there, but somebody had to put it in there. I don't know how it got there because middle of nowhere, but this huge trout is dead. But I sat down on a log and beautiful day last week, and for the hell of it, I called Eddie. And I thought I heard something answer me, but I don't know.
Oh my. No,
You
no, no,
know,
no, 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 no. We can't just leave it at that because that's fascinating. So you sat there on the log, quiet day, you call out his name. What's the response you think you hear?
help. But,
Oh my, that's terrifying.
well, I got out of there. Now I took a tick with me. But I want to point out something else strange about this. Um, right up the road when you get back on the main highway, right up the road where I do think he really did disappear. I took the measurements, and on the right side of the road, if you're going up this road, going up towards where his farm was, his farm's gone now.
Mhm.
There's a foundation on the right, and what it was a chemical plant back in the 1910s. Chemical plant is what they used when they did the lumber up here. They would strip off all of the bark, and they call it a chemical plant because they would turn it into charcoal. They would burn it in pits and turn it into charcoal, and of course they left all the residue in there, so it's kind of like tar underground. But at these foundation on the side of the road, there is signs. I've never seen these signs before. That due to the United States government, you're not allowed to trespass anywhere near here. And these signs are old, but they've been
I've never heard of that outside of like maybe like an Area 51 type situation.
right. So of course I'm looking up in that hollow thinking, what's up there? Because I mean I
Yeah.
can see the foundation, but why would you do that? Because this it don't make sense. Now I'm going to go in there. Well, shush. I might wander in there by accident sometime and see
Yeah,
what.
this is all a bit. This is a comedy podcast. This is all a bit.
Right. So I might, I am going to wander in there. I just haven't figured
Yeah,
out.
because I wonder if the signs are that old, if it's still being maintained and watched, and then furthermore, if it's not, what remains are in there that could have any clues?
Right. And that's what I'm thinking is, because it was a little stream that comes out of there. It's colored. So, there's some pollution in there. And this little stream that this Edwin Adams was fishing for trout with his buddies. And I did walk along that stream and I didn't see any fish. And I kind of, I thought, well, they're dead. But then when I was downstream to that ghost town, then I started seeing some, little natives. So I know there's trout in there, and I saw that huge, big dead trout. But
If you
uh,
happen to enter in there and you come out the other side as the Incredible Hulk, remember my kindness today.
that's what I'm, but, but getting back to little Eddie missing. Okay, so he was gone and he was never seen again. Uh, thousands, literally thousands of people went looking for him. Now on the same day, 13 miles away, this is in my McKean County volume book, a little boy named Michael Steffen. He was 7 years old. He went fishing too. So I believe, I don't know if that was the first day of fishing in 1910, but it was April 16th. That's close to what it was nowadays, used to be. Um, he was fishing with his buddy, and his buddy was 13, and like little Michael was 7. And they were fishing on a windfall run, which is probably about the same size as the stream that Eddie was fishing on. It's Wolf Run. Has native trout in it. I went up there, looked at, I mean, don't look, even if there was a huge rainstorm, you're going to drown in it. But
Yeah.
his buddy turned around and he was gone, so his little Michael, he thought, well, maybe he walked back to his house. So with his friend there, George left. And then later he went looking for his buddy at his farmhouse, and his dad said, well, he's not here. And he said, well, he disappeared today. And then the same thing, they shut
Mm.
down the works in Ludlow and they went looking for him. Never found him either. The weird, thing that happened on the same day, they were both fishing, both young, 7 years old, 9 years old. Never any trace of him found. I mean, there's some more stuff I've found out since then. During World War I, this was 1910 when little Edwin disappeared. He was 9. There was a injured man in an Italian hospital, in on the front there in Europe, and the nurse he had, she was a Red Cross nurse. She was from Butler, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Now, it was such a big thing in 1910 that, it's all over the Butler paper and everything. This little boy disappeared.
Hmm.
They talk more about Edwin Adams disappearing because I think his dad had money. Little Michael Steffen's dad had no money. So their search kind of ended. But anyways, he told this nurse in Italy, this wounded soldier, American soldier, that his name was Edwin Adams. And she recognized, oh, the story. Oh my God, I got the guy. Here he is. He's in the military.
Yeah.
She sent word back to Butler, and of course, word got to the father up in Lamont, and then he, contacted the Department of Army. I mean, they sent all these investigators over, and it also happened to be Edwin Adams' brother who was in the army in France, so he got special permission to go to Italy, and
Oh.
they could never find this guy. So
Oh
they think
no.
it was just a hoax. The guy knew the story and told it and then disappeared.
Now,
That's
I
all.
don't know how much research you've done afterwards, but was there ever any reports afterwards of more missing children? Was there a pattern of that?
Well, now that has become a specialty that I'm looking at now.
Okay.
Because since then I thought, how many are missing? Missing. I found a little boy in Ridgeway. Okay, in 1910, same time, I'd say a month later, he disappeared. Uh, that one's a weird one because I can read more about it outside of the area than inside. the local newspapers would talk about, well, this is his father works at this store, and he didn't come home from school. He was a 10-year-old boy too. Ross, his name was, and it never answered. And I can't find that family
Mm,
anywhere, in genealogy. Um, they never answered whether he was found. So I'm assuming he wasn't found.
okay.
I can't find no obituary. Um, if you go up into McKean County, I found kids missing up there, uh, people missing. Marjorie West is like probably the big famous girl that's missing.
Okay.
Okay, that there's a websites on that all over. She disappeared probably 8 miles from where the little George Stephan or little Michael Stephan disappeared in the Allegheny National Forest in the 30s, and she was never found. Um,
So there could potentially just been a predator up there
there
on
probably
the
was.
loose.
That there was white slavery was a big thing back then, and I have a lot of stories of girls.
I'm actually not familiar with that. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
White slavery.
Yes, yeah, especially for like the in reference to that time period.
Um, yeah, it's still going on today. I mean, I think when they say white slavery, they're talking about the Caucasian, but it's the same thing that's going on at the border right now. They're bringing in a lot of those young kids as slaves. They're passing them off as this is their father that's with them and so forth. And what they would do back then, the same thing, they would kidnap kids and they would sell them into slavery. Now, obviously, the perverts,
Hmm.
could be a rich person, um, and that's what they would do. They kidnap. Now, more likely, this is what I believe. Little Edwin was stolen, for nefarious purpose. That this
Yeah.
guy in the weeds, he, pervert more likely took him, who knows, 10 miles away. Who knows what he did to him? He's dead. The child in Ludlow, which is 13 miles away, even though it was the same day within 3 hours, I couldn't see possibly how the same guy could have been, 13 miles, 1910. Very few people had a car.
Hmm.
Uh, there was no direct train line there, so how would that same guy be, the same perp? So I don't think he was. I think maybe little Michael Stephan probably somehow wandered into the woods, and that's real thick, and that's middle of nowhere too, and there's
And
no
you said there were some extra deep spots up there in the water as well.
way down below. I don't think he fell. I mean,
Okay.
or drowned because I walked along the stream. Both of these streams are very small, very small. I mean, you would have to be held underground to drown or held underwater to drown. So I don't think either one of them, were drowned. I just think that Michael Stephan somehow ended up in the woods, got turned around, and probably died up there because that night it snowed very heavy and it was freezing, so no little kid, and he was dressed. The day they went fishing, it was real warm, so he wasn't dressed to survive. So I think someday maybe they'll find little bones in a cave
You
somewhere.
know, honestly though, sometimes too, if the animals get a hold of you, the elements, you
Right,
might never be found.
and that's um, you know what I think it. And I have a boy in Potter County. I have three in Potter County that I researched now, and then the one of them disappeared in 1890s. You know,
Okay. Wow.
then and his family, his mother, they ended up moving to Buffalo, but she would go in the paper every once in a while. My poor little boy. Uh, and then in 1920, a guy on his deathbed up there made a confession that he was in downtown's Cartersport, which is the capital of Potter County, and a rich man on a train offered him $500 if he would kidnap this little kid,
Mm.
and he said he did.
Man,
And
these are such different times.
yeah, the guy from New York City was very wealthy, lost his son to influenza or whatever,
Mm.
and that little boy reminded him of his son. So, a little long story short, I won't finish that because I didn't write the story yet, but uh, there is some truth to that. They
That's
went to
so
New York and found
yeah,
this kid.
that's so interesting. And I think I mentioned it at the top of the show, but just like the time period where you write about, it's like, people were different. Um, just in the case alone, they shut down the whole factories.
Right.
a group of convicts, like 300 convicts
Yeah,
or something.
came down from
Like
New York. We volunteered. Yeah.
like when you think of convicts now, you don't think of men with honor. You know,
Oh,
you
no.
just think of criminals. Back then, they were just different stock. It's so interesting, and so many different immigrants were blending together in these little towns just because they were able to find work.
Right. And there was so much work around here. A lot of the stories in my book too take place at immigrant camps. You know, they had work camps. So you had Australia or Austrians, you had Czechs, you had Hungarians, you had Italians, you had Germans, and a lot of them, roomed together. I mean, they had their
Hmm.
own. They were segregated. They didn't put the Poles hated the Russians, so they didn't put them together.
Yeah.
The Austrians hated the Poles, and but they had their own little spaces. But of course, the only thing to do back then, which was kind of amazed me too, all these small towns around St. Mary's, each of them had what was called bowdy houses. Okay, that's
Oh
just
boy,
houses of
that sounds like the place you want to be, actually.
yeah, the house of prostitution they were, and so all they had was alcohol and they had prostitutes, because they're far away
Gambling, I'm sure.
and gambling, and they got drunk and a lot of them got killed that way because they would fight
Whew.
and kill each other, so a lot of those stories are in there, and speakeasies, were big. Uh, my family's from St. Mary's, Germans, um,
Okay.
so we weren't the bootleggers, but my grandpa had a transport company and hauled garbage and all that. And my grandma told me stories, but they, put the booze underneath the garbage and away it goes, and deliver it, But
Now, has that cultural diversity bled into Elk County today?
yeah, yeah. St. Mary's was founded by Bavarians, from
Okay.
Bavaria. Okay, as a religious, you know, to escape
Is that
persecution.
is that like a Christian Orthodox type thing?
Catholic. Uh,
Catholic? Okay.
yeah, I mean, I've been over there many times to Germany and where my ancestors came from, but I don't understand this persecution thing. But because Roman Catholic, Bavaria is Roman Catholic. The other parts of Germany are Lutheran. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, um, but predominantly, now maybe we're getting away from it, but most of the family here are still descended from the original ones. You go to Johnsonburg, they had more of a mix. Now that's a big Italian area.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of Poles there too on the hill, and they kind of, and there was Germans. And Ridgeway is more of a melting pot. Um, One thing I did find out that was kind of neat. I don't know if it's kind of neat, but uh, they're always we're a small county, Elk County, so you had three football teams. You had your St. Mary's football team. Actually, we had two football teams, Ridgeway football, and then there was Johnsonburg. There was always a big rivalry, still is, between St. Mary's and Ridgeway.
Hmm.
Little animosity there. Well, I found out where that came from during the Great War, World War One. All these Germans up here in St. Mary's, and then down there in Ridgeway, they weren't German. So they would come up here during the night. And they'd pick a house that had a lot of German name in it. And they go in and beat the shit out of everybody.
Oh Jesus.
Because
Oh
they're like,
Jesus, that's
you guys
terrible.
are, you guys are the damn,
I
so
didn't see that coming.
yeah. So then, of course, then a bunch of Germans would get together and they go down to Ridgeway and bust
Oh,
it
nothing like
up.
some football race wars, huh?
Right. So that started the rivalry. So, and that's still to this day. People don't
That's
know that, but
that's horrible.
of course, I could go on and on and on about history, but getting away from the murders, but that is, the true. I mean, I didn't see anybody killed because of, like racism. I
Yeah.
mean, you do see some African American murders I wrote about, but they were always between African Americans. I don't know if they did mix back then. I'm assuming, um, you know, but
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of times too, when you add alcohol to such strong cultural differences,
oh yeah,
violence ensues,
it's
unfortunately, especially with
even
the language barrier.
yeah, even today,
Hmm.
Now, one thing I found out kind of in all this research, I've researched 500 murders, and because of Elk County's location, I have not found evidence of a serial killer. Okay, you'll find that in Pittsburgh and so forth. You'll find that somebody came in, killed somebody, and there's no possibility that it was somebody local, so it had to have been a transient. You know,
Hmm.
uh, I haven't found any murders here that are really like that. So there's not like somebody, and it's probably because we're not real close to Interstate 80 or any interstates here, so it wasn't always somebody passing through. And I haven't totally done McKean County yet, but I haven't seen evidence there yet either, which
Okay.
just surprised me.
Well, real quick, you mentioned your website. Plug where your books can be found. Plug some of your books real quick. Amazon, where are
Amazon,
they all located? Okay.
Amazon, yeah, they have all the books I have. 4 books plus I have the reprinted Tiger at the Bar. Plus I have Elk County Journey Through Time. He's from another local author. I just reprinted. I think I mentioned I worked for Xerox, so I have all the printers. I don't know if you can see the printers in my living room
Oh,
over there,
okay,
but
yeah.
I could print and have a press in my dining room. But so I can print them. I just couldn't print my own. I tried and I sold too many, so it was either give up my life and sit here all day, night, and print,
Well,
or just
that's a good
sit down.
problem to have, though. That's a
It
good
was a
problem
good
to have.
problem, but it's just
Okay, then let's talk real quick. Future projects. Did you say at one point you were having a paranormal book, or was that just me being excited?
that was you would be excited. But
Oh boy.
well, I'll tell you. The one I'm working on now, because I'm a little nuts, so I kind of move. I've been working on Powder Tioga Volume 1 Murders, but I found some really neat things in every county. But so I am working on a book called Mysterious, Tragic, and Forgotten Elk County. There will be some paranormal in there.
That sounds very interesting.
Uh, just a quick one about the pigpen murderer. Okay, I talked about earlier.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
the guy fed them to the pigs. Okay, the reason that guy got caught, his name was Henry Hovenberger, was because when he killed this guy named Vincent Noctway, this was in deer season 1929, he took his coat, hunt coat, took his hat, took his boots, took his gold watch.
Hmm.
That's how he got caught, because one of the victim's buddies was out looking for him. There's search parties looking for him. Ran into Henry and noticed, my God,
That's my stuff.
he's got his stuff on. Anyways, so I was at a book signing not too long ago, and a guy um, told me, he says, that Henry story? I said, yeah, yeah. He says, we have a camp down there. He says, I used to go to that all the time. He says, and we'd be inside drinking. He says, and on the porch, you'd hear somebody, oh, and you'd hear footsteps. Well, we always looked out, never anybody there. And he says, and everybody says that's Noctway looking for his boots. So there is some ghost story along that line. you know,
That's
with
so
that
interesting.
murder. I mean, I could tell you a lot. I don't look for him, but I have a lot. Uh, I could share
I'm sure you actually debunk some too, because I'm sure some of these murders have you been attributed to paranormal and you've gotten to the bottom. Has there been any instances like that?
Well, I wouldn't say paranormal. I would say
Or mystery? I'll throw out
mystery,
mystery.
mystery, mystery. Yeah, like this one's the best one, and I haven't written it yet. It'll be in my volume 4 of Elk County, which will come out maybe by Christmas. But and this is actually worldwide, because they use this a case study. Uh, but long story short, this guy was a head teller of the bank in Johnsonburg. The building's still standing. He would lock the doors, and he had an apartment upstairs. Okay. Um, and the bank manager came to the bank one day, and this is 1895,
Mm,
and the doors were locked. And seeing that guy upstairs would always open the doors, and so he had a key, so he let himself in. He thought, geez, he's not down here yet. So he went upstairs, and he found him dead in his bed, but he had 2 bullet wounds to his head. Either
mm.
one of them could have been fatal. Okay. Um, so back then there was maybe a rush to judgment, but they said, well, this is suicide, you know, and the the deceased man's brother was an attorney in Lock Haven. Well, he came up and he said, bullshit. My brother didn't commit suicide. How could he shoot himself twice in the head? And I guess back then you could do the prosecution. Like if the
Oh,
local authorities, because then he became the prosecutor, and he said it was a murder. And he said his roommate, he had a roommate, is his roommate's ex girlfriend now was dating the victim, and they just had become engaged. And actually, that's the last place he was seen sitting on a front porch with,
Oh.
and they were making wedding plans. So this the brother of the deceased accused the roommate of murdering him. And this is 1895. Well, the brother said, or the accused said, I didn't murder him, And they said, well, you have motive, he's dating, And he said, no, I was in Wilcox, which is about 10 miles away, with a girl, which was a scandal back then because he stayed overnight with a girl in Wilcox.
Ooh.
So they brought that girl in, and long story short, um, he had to go to attorneys because they were able to prove that you could shoot yourself twice in the head. You
Oh,
could survive
wow.
one shot, and he they proved. They used other cases throughout the world. There's two other cases that you can survive a gunshot wound to the head. And the reason they did, because they found in the deceased's left hand, and he was left-handed. See, and that was another thing because the gun was found in his right hand. So they said, whoever did that didn't know he was left-handed. But they
Mm-hmm.
found his left hand a dirty, bloody handkerchief. And
Oh.
right hand was the pistol. Well, that's, they said, because he shot himself once, woke up
And
bleeding, so he wiped the blood and he used the gun to shoot him on the other one. So I don't know, but that I do
so
believe that was solved.
so you can technically shoot yourself twice in the head. Hillary Clinton heard that one time and just went off to the races.
Right.
Um, I don't want to get off topic. Jim, I want to thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
You've been an absolute pleasure. Real quick, one last time, plug yourself. Let the people know all about you. You've been amazing.
ElkCountyMurder.com on Facebook or on the web. That has my books on there on Facebook. I try to put more stuff on there. Like I said, I work full time and I'm working on these books, but I would like to come back someday when I get this Allegheny County. It's on my schedule there, but
Absolutely.
it's called Unforgiven is the name of no, Unrecoverable, because one
Ab-
victim's been recovered.
Absolutely. We'd love
So
to get you back on there. Again, thank you so much for coming in. Guys, make sure you check Jim out. He's an amazing author, great guy. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like, share, subscribe, do all that jazz. And until next time, peace out. Peace and love.
thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.